Hello everybody and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, I'm also known as JMonster, and today I have some more Silmarillion Total War for you. We're going to be playing on the ADURANT Outpost map, and this is a 2v2v2v2 free-for-all battle. So we're going to have 8 players in here. I'm going to be playing with UMAD Commander, and let's take a look at my army composition here before we jump into the battle itself, which is quite titanic. There's a lot of twists and turns throughout, so I hope you guys enjoy it. But I'm going to be playing as the Guarded Realm of Doriath today. I've brought 2 X-Men of the Girdle. I've also brought 3 Sword Host of Region, 2 Wardens of the Girdle, Light Infantry, some Spear Host of the Girdle for a little bit of extra light mid-range missile punch. I've brought some of the Tier N Lice Danin, the Guards of Fallen Leaves, and I've got 2 Marksmen of Region in addition to. And to round it all off, I've also got 3 units of Axe Guard of Region, and the Fearsome Kuthali, and that's where my general's going to be hanging out today. But let's go ahead and take a look at UMAD Commander's army as well. He's going to be playing at the Sons of Feanor, which is an interesting pick for this particular scenario and for the particular map. He's got 2 Mounted Company of Kurufin. Actually, he might even have as many as 3. I'm seeing 2 at least. He's also got some of the Roqueni Magloro with their new mounts that we have taken from the Botet mod. That look just fantastic and just blend very seamlessly into the faction. Also got 3 Footmen of Amras, 2 Rangers of Hellevorn, which are an armor-piercing javelin unit. Got at least 2 Archers of Amrald with their armor upgrades, some Huntsmen of Thargelion, and 2 companies of the Defenders of Aglon. They're looking like they don't have their armor upgrade this time around, but that's alright. They still rock with about 11 or so armor, which is pretty helpful for keeping them alive. Well, that's going to be for our team. Let's go ahead and see what the other 3 teams have brought to the battle today. And so the next army we're going to look at today is the forces of the Green Elves of Assyrian. We have an army here played by DF Allfather. I think he's one of the newer players to the game. But yeah, he's got at least 3 units here of the Skirmishers of Rathlorio, backed up with 3 companies, no, 4 companies perhaps, of Spear Host of Rathlorio. He's also got 2 Kinsmen of Denethor, which are the legendary company for Assyrian. He's got some Rangers hanging out in here, I'm almost certain. Got some Urfanen Tower, 2 companies of Mytharnen Tolgalen, some Ents, and probably some hidden units here. I know he's got some Horse Archers, the Sentries of Gelion, and it's looking like he's got 3 companies of the Scouts of Gelion as well. And his ally today is going to be the Wolves of Tolin Gaurhoth, commanded by Tundra's Fox. And Tundra's has an interesting army, so he's got a ton of Howlers here. So he's got 2 full units of Howlers, 2 detachments of Howlers, and then another 2 units of Howlers. He's got Ash Priests, 2 companies of Gijak Skadas Wolfguard. He's got some Laug Skadas, some Thrangshik Wolfborn. Whoop. Yet more Laug Skadas and some Gijak Skadas. That's that gold collab. So these are the heavy melee cavalry, whereas the Laug Skadas have both an armor-piercing attack and an armor-piercing charge, so they can function almost like a hybrid Lancer type unit. The Thrangshik are 2 HP, heavily armored wargs. You can actually give them an armor upgrade, and their damage on the charge can be quite devastating. It's a little bit less than the Roqueni Magloro, but they do have some higher numbers as well to offset the lower damage values. I think that's gonna do, although there might be some Hishpul-Kuraz here as well. Indeed there are, so I'm seeing 3 units here of the Hishpul-Kuraz Agul Kalab. These are mounted javelins, and their javelins are actually fiery projectiles that directly attack the morale of the units that they hit. So very utilitarian. That's not the right word. They have a lot of utility. They're sort of like a Swiss Army knife, because after everything is said and done with their javelins, they're actually spear wargs, so they have some sizable bonuses against mounts, and in particular, they can be good against elephant units, surprisingly. Let's move on over here. Take a look at the Easterling force under Eclipse. They're going to be paired with the House of Fingolfin today. He's brought some Eastron Marauders. Looks like at least 2 companies of the Eastron Marauders. Chieftain's Honor Guard, Pillagers of Himring, a couple Pillagers, maybe 3 Pillagers in total, a couple of Ravagers as well. These guys are locked morale. A large number of Halberdiers. I think he's got the max number of Halberdiers, so 3 full units and 2 detachments. And he's got at least 3 units of the Wardens of Lothline as well, who are actually an Inspire unit, so they're going to give the already formidable morale values of the high tier boar infantry, just a little bit of an extra boost to keep them in the fight for that much longer. Chieftain's Honor Guard are here as well, I think I mentioned them. And there's some Salamandrine Guard and some mounted horse archers that are somewhere in here. We're going to see them try and take the city and secure it earlier on. Now, back here we have the army of Fingolfin. They're going to be trailing a little bit behind their ally Eclipse, and they are commanded today by Lord Ironhammer. I believe he's got a full 4 Bladesmen of Barrett Ithel, the heavy sword and board infantry for Fingolfin. They're also high tier. Got some Ferdsmen here, a whole bunch of Ferdsmen from the House of Hador. These are a lower tier spear unit. 3 companies of the Sentries of Hithlum. These are pikemen, and they can be particularly potent inside of the city. We have some Armitar here, so these are actually detachments of the Bladesmen of Barrett Ithel, but they're a little bit more elite, and consequently they get their own unique model as well. The Hirumatar are the same thing, just for the Blade Masters of Barrett Ithel, rather than the Bladesmen. Sons of Húrin and the Adimo Adantar present on the battlefield as well. 2 companies at least of the Marksmen of Barrett Ithel. We've got some Lancers of Anon in Galuth, and the sexy and deadly Arqueni Findicano. This is the legendary company from the House of Fingolfin. They are armor-piercing archers meant to represent the horse archers and the personal retinue of Prince Fingon during the period of the Siege of Angband, when Glaurung escaped and prematurely attacked the Elves of Hithlum, but were driven back by Fingon and his mounted bow companies. And then I think we've just got one final team here, and they're both going to be Finarfin armies. And this one's going to be commanded by Melkon. He's got Bridge Wards of Nargothrond. These are pretty standard armies. A couple of Bridge Wards there. Oh, maybe even as many as 3. Yeah, actually he took 3 of the Bridge Wards of Nargothrond. He's got some Wardens, Marksmen of Nargothrond, Sartor Findorado, Arqueni Mormagilwa, and 3 companies of Swordsmen of Talath Dirnet, and he's going to back those up with some Stalkers of Taud and Fauroth. And there's another company of the Wardens over there. So a bit of a smaller Finarfin force, not as many reserves, not as many supporting missile units, but those 3 pikes can certainly be very scary, especially in a scenario like this where it's like narrow, urban, close quarters fighting. Over here, the second House of Finarfin army is commanded by Death Eater. It's a little bit more numbers focused. He's got some Wardens of Nargothrond, Swordsmen of Talath Dirnan, a full company of the Swordsmen of Talath Dirnan. The detachments, it's important to note, are actually armor-piercing javelins, the only ones that are available to Finarfin at all. Some Arqueni Mormagilwa and Death Eater's army as well. More swordsmen, Bridge Wards, Archers of Talath Dirnan, a few Archers of Talath Dirnan, and of course the Marksmen are going to be present as well. There's going to be 2 of them. A bunch of Defenders of Talath Dirnan, just a lot more mid-tier units. If you kind of look at the size difference, it's probably about... his army is at least like a third, or maybe like 40% smaller than Death Eater's. So, that is going to be all for the army compositions. Let's jump into this game. So, the order of the day for both you, Matt, and myself was, of course, to link up our armies and then push in together as a group. So we're going to move to take this position here, but Eclipse and the House of Fingolfin are racing to push into the center. Now, it's one of the informal, I guess, gentlemen's agreements that we had moving into this game, was that we would all try and take the city and fight in the center. So that's exactly what Eclipse is doing here. And he is marching at a very quick pace up this hill, but he's also got... I think his horsemen are in here already. They will be coming up here to sort of form a vanguard for his army, so we should be seeing them very, very shortly. Well, it's not 100% sure where they are at the moment, but let's go ahead and speed things up just a little bit. The Green Elves and the Wolves of Tulin Gaurhoth here, getting into a little bit of an early fight, and there we go. We found the Horse Archers. Eclipse getting in some early harass here against the Hishpukras. However, their numbers are such that they will be able to soak that up pretty easily. Now, if you're wondering why they're going down to Shaken, that's probably something to do with the projectile, but it is the same sort of value, the morale loss value, as the poison arrows. So I don't think it's anything more than just a UI bug. That's kind of my take on it, because there's no numerical reason that they would drop from Shaken, and it will do that with any unit. So that's kind of my thoughts, is that it's just a UI bug, but it certainly does look impressive, doesn't it? You got the 3 companies here of the Easteron Horsemen, Lances of Anon and Galud, and if you look at it in aggregate, it's actually a very scary cavalry force. It far outstrips what the Sons of Feanor put into the field, certainly, in terms of versatility and the combined arms that they can bring to bear. And Toland Gauderhoth as well, I think, would struggle against that force. But in any case, these Easterlings have now made it very, very quickly, astonishingly quickly, in fact. We haven't even made it to the outskirts here. We were just marching the whole time, trying to preserve our morale. But Eclipse really wanted to get in here and take up these defensive positions, which, you know, not a bad idea. He will be able to bottle us up with some of his halberds, for example, and that's something that we don't have a lot of direct answers to as both Doriath and the Sons of Feanor. But this does come at something of a cost, as these units here are now already warmed up, and I think they're going to drop down to winded before they even make it to their forward positions. So that's something to bear in mind when you're doing these kind of rapid advances, that you do pay for it a little bit with longevity of your troops, and fatigue does have some pretty substantial penalties for units in melee. So this will be an interesting gamble. We'll see how it works out for him. Meanwhile, you can see the Green Elves slowly maneuvering forward. A lot of their troops have now come out of hiding, and they're going to be moving alongside some very strange bedfellows, the Dominion forces of Toland Gauderhoth. I think their order of the day is going to be to come over on this side, sort of where the House of Ingulfin has now arrived. They've had to match the speed of their ally to avoid getting cut off, and so now they got these two armies here that are setting themselves up defensively inside of this city. My Wardens now laying down some poison arrow fire. My Sword Host being rushed forward in order to meet the battle lines of our enemies, but I did leave a bit of a gap here, and this is kind of my bad. So I wasn't expecting Eclipse to get up here as quickly as he was able to, and it doesn't look like you, my commander, was either. So we were already setting up some bowmen on Overwatch in the event that the Green Elves decided they wanted to come behind us, and you can see that we've set up some additional forces down here to meet their advance if such an eventuality arises. But I actually almost got my Rangers here caught out, but my poor Wardens of the Girdle are really going to take it on the chin here. I tried to turn them around and maybe have them pop off a quick volley, but at the very least the positioning is to our advantage. The Archers of Amrod are here, able to lay down some very devastating close quarters volleys into both the Wardens of Lothland and into the Salamandrine Guard. And I begin to bring forward some of my own troops. Axguard of Region, we're going to try and shore up a line and isolate this pocket and surround and destroy it if we are able to, because we certainly have the numbers to do so. I'm going to bring forward my Tyrion Lysdanen as well. I'm going to look at maybe tossing off a few volleys here, along with my Axemen of the Girdle into this very exposed Easterling advance guard. Eclipse is kind of see the writing on the wall a little bit, and I'll begin to pull out with the Salamandrine Guard. They've taken some fairly substantial losses, a little bit over a quarter maybe of their total number. And a few of them will stray into the wrong neighborhood and be hacked down by my Axe Guard. Now we've kind of regained control of the situation a little bit, but we do still have a substantial contingent of Easterlings behind our line, at least 300, 400 Easterlings. Well, probably more like 200 or so that we are going to have to deal with. Axemen of the Girdle here. I think I ordered them to go a little bit farther forward, or a little bit farther backwards, sorry, so they could toss their throwing axes, but they ended up ignoring that order and getting themselves stuck in on the Wardens of Lothland. But at the very least, we are slowly crushing these guys. My light troops are pressing them hard, and we've got some supporting units in the back in the form of the Rangers of Hellevorn and the Tyrion Lysdanen et al. Now I got my Axe Guard here. They have handily repulsed those units. What I probably should do is throw them at the rear of these Easterling forces, but we do have enough numbers here to effect a sort of partial surround, and this is where we can funnel reserves into easily. So I think what I end up doing is seeing that and bringing my Axe Guard around this way in particular. Ooh, this is a formidable looking infantry square. Look at that. There's units on all sides. It's almost like a Napoleonic infantry square. And those Salamandrine guards certainly don't want to leave them to their own devices, where they can cause all kinds of pain and suffering. Down here, the Halberdiers, winded and having to fight uphill, are actually struggling against the Foemen of Amras, which is something that I wouldn't have personally expected. So now I see the opportunity. Going to move forward with my Axe Guard, engage the Salamandrines, and also engage these halberdiers on the flank. If we pop down here, it looks like, in the end, Tolin Gaudhoth and the Elves of Assidian are going to try and come around the rear and engage potentially the House of Ingolfin, but they've actually moved farther back. But now they're going to have to worry about the advance of the two House of Finarfin armies, who are unfortunately the last ones into the fray, but they did kind of deploy themselves on a hill quite far away from the settlement itself. So they've taken a little bit more time to get down here. But once they get in, we recognize that as players, and then we're going to pick on them a little bit, so don't you worry. Over here, you can see some advanced units from Tolin Gaudhoth marauding through the forest, making sure everything is okay, possibly taking up and securing some ground for them to begin to funnel their forces into the city, and potentially to predate upon any stray and unwary units from the House of Ingolfin and the Easterlings. But for now, the main party is taking place over here. So we can see the House of Ingolfin now joining the fray as the Easterlings begin to lose ground. My Wardens of the Girdle have moved in on the flank here. You can see some missile units in the back, Axemen of the Girdle, Rangers of the Girdle, laying down the pain. And this is some sorely needed help for the Easterlings. Yeah, they've really begun to engage over here. We managed to drive back those troops from the hill, but they've been replaced with some pillagers of Himring. Still got my Axe Guard of Region there fighting it out. And the Easterlings have carved their way through our light troops. You can see that we've pulled basically everything back, and now we're just throwing this one minor unit of Wardens under the bus so that we can continue to pour missile fire into these guys. So my Marksmen of Region coming over here as well. They probably shouldn't be here. Ooh, a very scary volley. We've got the Spear Host of the Girdle tossing in as well, and this is just becoming something of a nightmarish massacre. I think these guys still have ammo. So they're probably... Oh, I think what they're going to do is maybe go up here, or this is a bit of a misclick on the part of you, my commander, and the unit is going to get itself stuck in, but not really truly stuck in. They're just kind of behind my Axe Guard, and maybe they get poked by a few pikes, but they'll be okay. There's still the option to draw them back. Ooh, and Tyrion Lystanen now, using their ammunition, cutting through these guys. And we weren't able to beat them in melee, but we will be able to shoot them to death. Yeah, there you go. And those halberdiers now beginning to rout. And then reinforcements are going to come in and sweep the remaining Easterlings from the field. And there they go. Another unit of my Axe Guard here, maneuvering themselves into a position where we can start to outflank and partially surround the Pillagers of Himring and the newly come Sentries of Hithlum, who are already shaken. But that's to be understood. They are very tired from having to run uphill, and they are fighting against some high quality, fresh, and ready to go units. So yeah, that's not really that surprising. But if we pop on over to this side, you can see that the House of Finarfin is going to, under Melkon in particular, is going to be the first to the party, and the Orcs and Green Elves are not going to make it before they're able to take up defensive positions and establish a line, which is going to be a tough one. There are options, however. So the Green Elves can kind of skirt through this formation, go up here. They can fan out in like a big arced firing line and just pelt the House of Finarfin into submission. And they're going to have the support of the javelins of the Hishbukras Agulkalab as well. So this could be a very tough fight for Melkon, although if they decide to take him straight on, then it's definitely going to be, the ball will certainly be in the court of the House of Finarfin, as that's the sort of thing that they specialize in. Verdsman of Dor Loman here, being picked on by a mass cavalry charge. Lancers of Anon in Galut. There's actually some Vorbak Gajutar in the field as well. This is the legendary company for the Dominion of Tolin Gaudhoth. They're well suited for fighting cavalry. Lancers, very fast cavalry in particular. Vorbak trying to pull out, but looks like they might get attacked in the rear. But I would expect the Vorbak to be able to win that fight fairly handily. And there go the Ferdsmen. It did take a toll on the Wargs. but nonetheless, the House of Ingolfin is going to lose a couple of their units here. And if we look over on the front line, they're having a bad time here. So we've managed to rout off a significant amount of these sentries. My Axe Guard are going to be able to pursue very, very far afield, which is honestly a bit of a mistake. I should have brought them in behind here. And I can't quite remember what my state of mind was, whether I just didn't see them running this way, or I thought that we kind of had that in the bag a little bit. Pillagers of Himring moving through here, some beaten up halberdiers. Still got some more reserves, and I'm going to bring forward my Axemen of the Girdle as well. Okay, so I think I do end up seeing it and then recalling my Axe Guard, especially when there's so much cavalry and some other armies that are slowly filtering in to the city. It seemed the prudent course of action to bring my Axe Guard a little bit farther back up here. Maybe just station them on the hill and get their shields facing forward so they can't just be easily shot to death. But if we look over here, House of Ingolfin is actually quite struggling on the line with the Easterlings. And now we're starting to push against them in a few different places as well, but, and this is the big but, we eventually realize that Finarfin is actually doing very well for themselves, and the Death Eater is present here, and his army hasn't really been tested, and he's already starting to take some pot shots at Fingolfin. So I think the easy answer here is that we form an alliance with our former enemies and begin to turn our attention towards the House of Finarfin, because in particular, they are, of course, they are fresh and they're newly come to the battlefield, but they are very, very tough, especially in the sort of fighting that we're going to be doing all throughout the ADURANT outpost. So you can see our lines beginning to at least try to disengage here, although not so much over here. You can see some more units coming back this way. But over here, we may not be at that point yet, but we will eventually make the attempt to disengage and disentangle our lines. The Arquini Findicano getting picked on here, probably. Oh yes, indeed, by javelins. Got some Archers of Talathune in there, and I think there's some swordsmen in the back. And the Arquini Findicano are, of course, unshielded and don't really have the greatest armor value. They have a base of 6. You can upgrade them once, but it's a bit more expensive than it would otherwise be. And so they are vulnerable to that sort of small arms fire. And some routing here. House of Finarfin has broken through a company of Ferdsmen like they weren't even there. And now Fingolfin is in some trouble. You can see another company of Ferdsmen running from the other front, and this is not looking great. So the Wardens of Nargothrond going to manage to engage their Arquini Findicano, who are also still being peppered by that small arms fire. We could see the end of this legendary company here. We haven't really seen them do too much. That would be very unfortunate indeed. Lord Ironhammer gets very lucky, sees it before it's too late, just as that unit was falling down to Shaken, and is going to be forced to retreat. They've formed a hastily erected battle line here, but that's not going to be enough to hold back Finarfin. And so, I think this is about the point where we realize we should not be fighting each other. And that instead, we need to make common cause against our very powerful enemies that have now appeared onto the rear. Now, if we take a look at the other Finarfin army, currently engaged in battle with the Green Elves and their allies, and they are losing in some places where like the mass and numbers of the Green Elves are greatest, but over here, especially with the 3 pikemen, it's going to be a hard thing to do to get through this from the front, and I don't think that the Green Elves really have the chops, and the Orcs of Tol Gallagher certainly do not with how many Howlers they've brought. And there was also this that I noticed. So the marksmen from Melkon managed to target some close formation Urfin and Tower, and so the Green Elves have been denuded of some of their most important, most damaging units that would have been vital in this conflict against the House of Finarfin. And so while they are kind of winning in certain places, I don't think that they have the necessary oomph to be able to finish this fight for good. Although I suppose we'll see. So a couple of units of Kinsmen of Denethor here. There's now Vorbat Gajutar and other cavalry in behind the lines, and of course there's some Ferdsmen from House Fingolfin here who are a little bit hesitant to join the fray, and I can't say that I blame them, especially not with just a unit of these kind of low-end spearmen. But now would be a good time, I think, to begin to pressure the back lines of House Finarfin. So I think We finally had some sense knocked into our heads. Indeed. Now, there's a little bit of... It's going to take time. There's going to be these minor skirmishes, but for the most part, you can see that our units aren't really actively fighting each other anymore. You can see we pulled back from here. What we've actually done is redeployed over this way. So we're starting to take on the House of Finarfin, and I've actually got my Tyrion Lysdanen over here. We managed to do a decent amount of damage to the Wardens of Nargothrond and to one of the pike units over there as well. So the Swordsmen of Talathirnin, a bunch of archers and other such nasty things are now focusing down my Tyrion Lysdanen. I should probably try to pull them back, but they're almost entirely out of ammunition at this point. I've also got my Kuthalim, who are focusing down this front line. First, we didn't get to see them shooting, because they have some handy green ammunition trails. Well, there's the blue streaked arrows that are coming in here as well, trying to prey on some of these Finarfin units. So we're doing our best. UMAD is over here as well. This guy's Rangers of Hellevorn still have some ammunition. You can kind of see the Bridgewater of Nargothrond here pushing through the Axemen of the Girdle. Some defenders of Aglon in there, but they're fighting against Arqueni Mormagilwa. So things are looking tough. I think we just killed the Easterling General. Big oops on our part. But Death Eater's House of Finarfin force is pushing forward. And they're giving us what for the time being. Rangers of the Girdle here, I'm going to throw them in, try and block for my Tyrion Lysdanen, who are currently retreating. They went down probably about a third of their unit there, maybe a little bit over. But I did manage to at least preserve some of the unit, and they're going to join our reserves on the back lines. And now, as you can see over here, still have a whack of Doriath infantry still left over. Lots of sword hosts, but they are quite tired at this point. Whereas the Finarfin troops are fresh. And I've got some Axe Guard and a few other things that we've managed to keep away from each other. And there's still continuing to be some skirmishing going on between UMAD and our quote-unquote friends on the other side of the field here. Now, I'm not going to move to actively engage them, but I am maneuvering some reserve units over there just in case, because you never know, do you? They're not really our allies, they're just friends of convenience at this point. I want to be very much aware of that. So I'm going to take my marksman Region forward, continue to try and pick on some important Finarfin units. Probably their pikes in particular are a big threat. And now they've broken through this first line of our assault. So we're going to have to send something with a little bit more teeth. Something that's made of sterner stuff than our light units. And I'm already maneuvering such reinforcements over on to my wings. So I've got Rangers there that are firing down. We've got Kuthalim out of ammunition, and they are going to be used to spearhead our assault against the House of Finarfin. Well, let's go ahead and check on the Green Elves and see how they're doing. Oof, that's ugly. Looks like some of the Scouts of Gelion now out of ammunition, just kind of being thrown into the fray, but so this is something that I see newer players do a fair amount. Infantry are not, they're not a ranged unit, right? They can only attack units that they touch, and even then they can only attack units along a front that is as wide as you specify. So when you toss them in a big blob like this, the game mechanically counts them as fighting, so they will lose fatigue as though they were fighting, even though they're not actually doing any damage. That's something that you want to be aware of when you're playing not just Silmarillion Total War, but any Medieval 2 mod or the base game, etc., etc. You want to try and maximize the efficiency of your infantry units by spreading them out and not blobbing them up and getting them to attack along as wide a front as possible. That being said, sometimes it's important in order to keep your lines from breaking that you have to double up like this, but in this case, I don't think there's any reason to send the Scouts of Gelion in there like that. Look up here, we actually have Sauron on the field today, which I didn't even realize. Good old Sauron. Give him a good smack. Pushing these units around, push them out of formation, that kind of works. Now, generally what you want to do with Sauron... Ooh, his presence is actually going to start a little bit of routing going on here. But generally what you want to do with Sauron is point him at big blobs of units that don't have anti-elephant bonuses, and just let him attack in these big long lines. Especially like a long front like this, the same way you'd set up enfilading fire with your missile units. Yeah, you definitely want to do that with good old Sauron. Well, there you go. I want to be careful having him around spears, as they are technically a soft counter. Looks like the Tolan Gauderhoth commander is issuing a lot of movement commands, which can sometimes screw up Sauron a little bit, but there's some units over here he could pick on pretty nicely. Archers in particular. Swordsman of Talathirnin. Yeah, I'm not actually too sure what he's doing at this point. Cross Howlers, chasing off some of the marksmen. I think Death Eater is trying to come to the aid of his ally, but it is splitting up the Tolan Gauderhoth and Green Elf forces a little bit, when they could instead be moving to attack or encircle these troops over here, but I don't think it really matters too much, since this fight is looking like it's lost. Although, it's got Sigelion, some Elksgarad's cavalry. No, it's not over yet. They've still got a fairly meaty front line. They could use it for some hammer and anvil attacks that might be enough to break Melkon, or at the very least, cripple his army. Where'd good old Sauron go? Well, I suppose we'll never know. Oh, here he is. Oh, Arquini Mormagillion are the last thing that you want to get him stuck in with. And so are pikes, so hopefully he manages to avoid them. See, this is a mistake I see people make with Sauron a lot. Just set him, pick a target, set him on something, and just let him attack, instead of constantly trying to micromanage what it is that he's doing. And this is really not an advantageous engagement for Sauron. The Arquini Mormagillion in particular are very good at fighting elephant class units. There we go. But yeah, let's move on from there. If we move over to this engagement with Death Eater, you can see that I've brought in some of my heavy-hitting units, and we are managing to surround, well, partially, to surround and attack his units in multiple places. He has managed to cut off some of our reserves from help, but we do have missile units that we're using to fire into the rear of them, so we'll be able to extract at least a deadly toll from that engagement. Sword Host of Region here, fighting hard against Swordsman of Talathirnin and some other units, and they should have that. Well, there's a lot of reinforcements from Death Eater that are moving in here in short order. But I do have some Axguard in reserve. My Kuthalim, I think, are nearby in the fray. And there's the possibility of a partial encirclement here that will tip the scales of this fight in our favor. And that's something that I highly recommend that you go for in all cases, instead of, say, bunching up, like we saw earlier. If you have the numbers, and if it's viable, there's no, like, cavalry that's going to charge your encircling units down, or a ton of missiles that's going to shoot them to death. Go for these kinds of encirclements. And you can see that my Axguard are going to do exactly that. Kick it into the full speed there. Maybe they're not going to. Maybe they're going to move over this way because we have some marksmen of Nargothrond who are laying down withering volleys of fire into my allies' two-handed units. The Port Defenders of Aglot really taking that on the chin, so I've got marksmen of Region moving forward, and I got some Axguard. But yeah, I think it would have been a better idea for me to move in with the Axguard, maybe use some of my other units here, because again, those partial encirclements really make a huge difference. Oh. So my Axemen will manage to catch out Death Eater's marksmen here. And they're going to carve them up. They're going to carve them up real nice. Archers of Talathirnin laying down some fire, but I have more units coming in this way. And they're going to go for... I'm not sure. They might go after the marksmen. They might go after the archers. I think the archers are probably a better idea because they're doing more damage than the marksmen are in close quarters at this point. Though it's possible that I just don't see them in all the chaos. Well, somebody's general just died. Might have been the Green Elf general. In fact, I'm fairly certain that it was. Death Eater moving in with some more reinforcements. See the Arquini Mormagillion trying to target them down with my Spear Host of the Girdle. Let's see if we can get some of them. Bridge wards now moving in, and this is quickly becoming a fight that is untenable for us. More reinforcements. Looks like they've managed to wipe out the Tyrion Lystanen and the Rangers of Helleborn who are trapped behind the line. So nice move there on the part of Death Eater's Finarfin army. But this is where we're going to start to turn it around a bit. More reserves have been mobilized. Got some Axe Guard in the back there. Some more marksmen. Some Archers of Amarod as well. Spearhost of the Girdle trying to fire. Unfortunately, you men are tripping over each other just a little bit. I moved these units over here so they have a clear line of sight, and then he moved his archers directly in front of my poor spear host, so I weren't able to do what I needed to do. But he's going for that partial encirclement, which I've talked up quite a lot at this point. So I'm going to reposition them, try and work around my ally. If we look back here, though, House of... Well, this is actually UMAD's army, so we have some Shield Bearers of Helleborn here, which I didn't notice before. They're just kind of forming up a rear guard in the event that House of Fingolfin wants to pick a fight. Oh, pardon me, I had to sneeze. And now we've started to push back the House of Finarfin here, and this is looking all right for Death Eater. But we are managing to encircle him. I brought forward the Kuthalim, and they're going to chop through the majority of the chaff that's over here. And this is largely Swordsmen of Talathirnin. And they're an okay mid-tier unit. I think there's some pikes mixed in there as well. But for the most part, their numbers are made up of mid-tiers, and we have the quality advantage, even though the numbers are a little bit more in Finarfin's favor. Look back here, my marksmen and my axemen have pushed forward. I don't think we've killed all of the marksmen. I think some of them managed to escape. Maybe. Maybe we managed to kill them all. I'm not sure. Oh, there goes a green elf general for sure. But we are pushing these guys back. Defenders of Talathirnin suffering quite grievously. I brought forward some axemen to make sure that we continue to win. But Death Eater has reinforcements on the way. Melkon, now clear of the Green Elves and Tolin Gaudenhoff's infantry forces, is moving to reinforce his allies' position. And he's in pretty good shape. He did take, fairly noticeable losses here. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to cripple him, and he did take on, 2 infantry forces, which is quite impressive. But then again, those are the two... The Tolin Gaudenhoff army wasn't really bringing a lot of their heavy-hitting infantry. The Green Elves are not amazing in a frontal fight like that, and they lost some of their most important units, so it's kind of unsurprising to me that, given that they threw themselves at a 3-pike army, that they were unable to break through. But that is... I may understand it, but it certainly does suck when you're on the other side of that, and I thought we were pushing back Death Eater. We had him kind of on the ropes at this point, and then Melkon's going to come in with a huge influx of reinforcements that we just don't really have an answer for. At least it's not a complete disaster. Look at this. Sauron's still kicking, eh? I hope he goes after those Archers of Talathirnin. That would be an easy fight for him. Oh, please, Sauron. Please. Maybe. Maybe. Oh yeah, he going for it. Oh no. So the archer is beginning to break. We are slowly encircling what's left of these troops, and this was actually a very substantial amount of Death Eater's infantry. And this includes some of his pikes. I think both of his pikes, or maybe most of them, are going to perish in that particular engagement. Oh no. Oh goodness. That's not where Sauron wants to be at all. Yeah, Sauron... You just need to pick a target. A lot of people, I've noticed when using Sauron, they will overcorrect with Sauron. And they're like, oh, well, he missed this particular attack, or he charged through this unit. I better reissue the charge order and make him do that all over again. And then they're like, well, Sauron's not doing what I want him to do. You just gotta let him do his thing. Thrangsheik Wolfborn, oh, definitely not the right engagement. Hunter's Fox didn't really pay the attention there that he needed to, and they're gonna get entangled on those pikemen. The Laugskaraz, though, they're gonna hit these guys hard. And it's certainly a welcome sight to have Tolin Gaudenhoff picking at the rear of Death Eater's forces. The Laugskaraz there are going to get actually destroyed almost utterly. Same with the Thrangsheik, but this was... I don't know why you would charge into the pikemen like this. That was a little bit crazy. pushing in with more numbers while I load the other side with my more harder hitting units. This is where the remnants of my Axe Guard are. My Marksmen are over here. I'm going to bring in my Kuthalim as well. You can see them in the back. We're going to move to surround and overwhelm this thin line of spears. But there's some bad stuff happening here. So Melkon's pikes are in the area. This is certainly one of the more weaker parts of the Finarfin line. So if we can break through it quickly, then we can potentially get into the rear of these units and maybe surround and destroy them, because they are quite tired. I think we've had success with that tactic in this battle so far, so if we can do it again, that would be just perfect. My Kuthalim here, managing to get behind them. And get countercharged by some swordsmen of Talathirnan, which honestly isn't a big deal for the Kuthalim, but there's more reinforcements that are moving in. Some spearmen of Nargothrond, or the wardens rather of Nargothrond. And Kuthalim are starting to run out of steam a little bit. And more of those tan and silver cloaks appear on the horizon. And things are looking pretty ugly for us. It's looking like Finarfin will probably take this fight. Now, if we go back here, it's not sunshine and rainbows either. The House of Finarfin has begun to move in against us. UMAD's cavalry is trying to do their best, and I think they should be using their ammunition probably on the Sons of Húrin. Oh no, a little bit of a micro error here on the part of UMAD Commander. These guys getting caught out. The Roqueni still in good shape, but this poor mounted company. Yeah, get them out of there. Get them out of there as quickly as possible. There is a possibility of the Furdsmen here. They're going to charge a little bit too far forward. If all this cavalry were to round them at the same time, hit them from 3 angles, they would almost certainly break nearly immediately. And we got back here Arqueni Findicano as well. They're a big, even in this mauled state, they're a big threat to the Roqueni Magloro. So UMAD Commander is very wise to keep them away from them. He said to pull off reinforcements we could be using to overwhelm Finarfin and their allies. If we were able to pull like full force into them, I think we probably could surround and overwhelm them. But unfortunately, we're fighting a two-front war now, as our treacherous, erstwhile, quote-unquote allies have now turned on us, smelling blood in the water. And we're being assaulted, as I mentioned, on both sides. But that's sort of the nature of a free-for-all, so you can't be too upset about that. My Kuthalim here starting to bring things back a little bit, but the numbers are against us. And our armies are certainly not long for this world. Hishbukraz going for a cheeky rear charge here. Some of my victorious light units have managed to carry on the fight and do reasonably well for themselves against the Finarfin mid-tiers. And the defenders of Talathirnan are being slowly overwhelmed. There's still cavalry in the back here, being a bit of an annoyance. Let's see what they're going after. Well, Sauron's still kicking. A few more javelins. Very nice. Targeting down the pikes, that is exactly the kind of target that Thunderous Fox should be going for.
The enemy are badly bloody. They have lost half their men.
Hishbukraz being driven back a little bit. Or certainly being wary of the Archers of Talathirnan, though they're a little bit too small now, I think, to be any sort of real threat. Ooh, and a nice big charge there into the defenders of Talathirnan might be enough to see them off for good. Oh, it doesn't look like it, though. These Hishbukraz don't want to be left in there for too long. Go for a charge against the Archers of Talathirnan instead, but they're going to be pinned in by pikes. We could see the end of this cavalry. Ooh. And Sauron, along with some Hishbukraz, are going to bowl over a unit of Wardens of Nargothrond. Some of them will get back up and fight in a pocket against the wargs, and they're going to do pretty decently for themselves in that fashion. But there's still more Hishbukraz back here, so doing everything we can now to pick on the House of Finarfin. But they're not actually the big threat, are they? It's the House of Fingolfin who is resurgent with their Easterling allies that are really making big waves here. And we've unfortunately been so focused on fighting Finarfin that the House of Fingolfin has flown under the radar a little bit. And so that's basically all of my troops still remaining. UMAD Commander still has some cavalry, so our team does have a presence on the field. but our infantry forces are basically in tatters. Nice little rear charge there. Take down some of the non-multiple HP units. And my poor Kuthalim are about to be overwhelmed. This has been a very bloody battle, hasn't it? Like many fights in different places for this cityscape. Very unfortunate what happened to the Green Elves here. I think if they had their Urfin and they didn't lose them in the way that they did, which seems... This seems a little bit like a newbie mistake, like being unprepared for the amount of damage that those split shots can do to you. But if they hadn't lost them and they used them to be like flanking this pike line, then maybe things would be a little bit different here. Maybe we'd be fighting against a Green Elf army instead of the House of Finarfin. But in any case, my commander roving about with his mounted company and his remaining cavalry units, looking for some opportunistic chances to crush the House of Ingolfin and their allies. We can see some Halberdiers of Lothland here. And they're getting charged down. Can't blame UMAD for this at all. And that's basically going to see the end of the Easterling infantry. I don't think they have much left over, except for a single solitary Salamandry guardsman up here. Firing endlessly at who knows what. Some of the mounted company here. Yeah. But it's very bloody. This is like a hill of corpses, and it's kind of funny the way that this ended up playing out. As this is the position that we previously occupied to destroy the Easterlings and their allies, the House of Fingolfin, or at least severely maul them in the early game. And then they turned around and did the exact same thing to us. You can see Fingolfin forces on like either side of this battle line here. There's like the fight that took place here, and then there's a whole bunch more that happened over here. Yeah, it's just kind of funny. My commander charging down some of the infantry, trying to do whatever it is that he can to try and lessen the lead that the House of Fingolfin has right now. And this is where we run into some interesting behavior. Oh no. Oh, that's brave. Brave but foolish. Oh yeah, those marksmen, or the Bridgeforge rather, might take like a couple casualties, but I don't think I would have thrown my cavalry at them that way. It seems like a bit of a misclick maybe on the part of Tundra's Fox. But if we take a look here, the presence of... There's actually quite a lot of cavalry in the back here, and now everyone has united in common cause against the House of Fingolfin, so these guys aren't going to touch each other. And Tundra's Fox is going to have his cavalry over here. Now, if you look at this, you look at all the cavalry that's present here, the House of Fingolfin can't actually... Well, there's some of those green arrows from the armor-piercing archers. But they can't actually present a united front without exposing their rear. Oh, no! Well, that's so brave. That's so crazy. I would not have done that if I was UMAD commander. I would certainly have waited. But, as I was saying, they're broken up right now. They can't actually unite and present a single front to their enemies. But their enemies are also divided. So if their enemies were to unite and say the House of Finarfin were to take their admittedly smaller numbers but superior pikes and such, and to attack this particular section of the line here, but there's not really anything that can withstand them, their pikes are going to do just fine. And the House of Fingolfin can't really unite against them without suffering losses from the cavalry. At the very least, they have a far better chance than the passivity that you're seeing right here, because once the House of Fingolfin has destroyed the cavalry, even if they stay here, they're just going to move forward and overwhelm them. Like, you can't win trying to box up the way that they're doing. They just don't have the numbers, and the House of Fingolfin has the quality. So this is sort of the time when drastic, dare I say desperate, aggressive action is called for. But we're not really seeing that here today. We're seeing the cavalry from the remaining forces trying to do their best to weaken the House of Fingolfin, but they're blocked off by some hard counters, and there's not really anything that they can do about it. So let's go ahead and fast forward just a little bit here so we get past this the stage of inaction. Oh yeah, and there's also Requeni Magloro. There's knights here. Like, now is the time to just do something bold, but unfortunately the House of Finarfin players are being a little bit timid here, in my opinion. Some more cavalry action going on over here. A sortie being led by the Sons of Húrin. trying to chase down some of the Tolengauerhoth cavalry. Well, let's see what he goes for. Oh, I would not take them head on. Don't do it. It's not worth your life. Oh, the Sons of Húrin are going to weather that storm. And the Hishvokras, I think, will melt away very quickly there. Yeah, that is certainly to be expected, I think. I could have sworn there's more cavalry over this way. And the Sons of Húrin, I think, start to turn around. So there is an opportunity for some cheeky rear charges here. Let's see if they go for it. Oh, Requeni Megloro, maybe. Maybe. No, it doesn't look like they'll have the opportunity. Oh, this might just go for it. Might just go for it. And because the lines here are so thin, the cavalry can use their mass to sort of break things up. Ooh, but the Sons of Húrin in there. Yeah, you want to be careful about that. You might lose. No, don't turn around. Oh, no. Sometimes it happens when like 20% of the unit or so is engaged, then the rest of the unit will move in to support them. But again, this cavalry still picking away, still getting in that chip damage. Well, Requeni Megloro are here. So maybe we're going to see something fancy. Oh, this is actually really smart. So the Sons of Húrin not really able to countercharge. And you're going to see a charge from the Requeni Megloro in there. Right into the flank and rear. That will actually do a decent amount of damage. But yeah, while all this is going on, the Finarfin players are just kind of sitting here. I actually remember this moment quite well, where Death Eater was telling us that he can't move forward because he doesn't have any, the House of Finarfin doesn't have any cavalry or something, which is just strange to me because there's all this cavalry out here that's ready to help out. But yeah, a little bit of inaction here on the part of the enemies of House Fingolfin, and it is certainly playing into their hands in a pretty substantial way. Ooh, a nice charge there by the Requeni Megloro. UMAC Commander finally managing to pull some of the House of Fingolfin units out of position and get some decent value off of his knights. Ooh, this would be a decent time to maybe go for the rear of those Ferdsmen. The Pikes are going to see it, and they're going to turn around. I think this might be the end of the Requeni Megloro. No, some of them will manage to pull through, but I think most of them will probably die there, especially getting charged in the rear by the Arqueni. Nope, 6 of them survived. There's still some Gijak Skatas at Gulkalab here. And they are taking, like, nice bites out of these units, but it's not enough. With infantry support, this would be different. And they're finally going to get a little of it, but it's too little too late. Like, we've looked at, like, maybe half of this cavalry fighting, like, entrenched spears all by themselves and doing decently. Certainly given the circumstances, but, you know, just slowness to react here on the part of the Finarfin troops. But now that threat is a little bit lessened. Gijak Skatas here. I think there's another company of them out here, isn't there not? There's Lauskaras. A full company of. Yeah. They're nice and blobbed up here too. Like if they had been doing this from the very beginning. Oh, and there goes the House of Fingolfin General. That's so significant. We might see some breaking. Yes, indeed we do. A lot of these units here are shaken. Now if they could just apply some cavalry pressure here, they could melt this entire section of the line, and that would really change the game. That would even things out in a huge, huge way, especially with all this cavalry still here. Just need to get a little bit of cav into the back there and capitalize upon the small window of opportunity of morale shock that the death of a general is going to give you. Like, the moments following after the death of a general can be so significant. I think UMAC Commander definitely recognizes this, but he wants to get rid of this damn archer who's been shooting at them the whole time. And down he goes after a brief struggle with the Roqueni.
Behold how our cowardly foe runs. It's time to press the attack.
Now imagine if there was 21 knights down here doing this thing. that would have been the end of this whole line here. The Roqueni, I think, they're going to manage to escape sort of intact, but there's only 4 of them left. One more charge, just one more opportunity to get in there and shock those Armitar. That's what's needed here. And some defenders coming in from the rear as well. But the Armitar are going to hold the line. And now the other wing has been overloaded with some very scary units indeed. But if we look at it, this is basically everything that the House of Fingolfin has left right here, aside from some Sons of Húrin. 33 of them now charging in from the rear. And this, I think, is going to be the end of the Finarfin forces. So let's get down and dirty here. Witness that devastating charge. Let's go ahead and fast forward now. It's a slow defeat for the House of Finarfin from this point onward. Now the Arimo Arantar pushing around the rear, and they're going to effect a nearly complete surround. Some bladesmen as well. And there's no more supporting cavalry. They've all been wiped out. This is game over. And a well-deserved win, I feel, for the House of Fingolfin. They chose their moment to attack very, very well. That was on point. And though they were aided somewhat by the inaction and the inability to unite and coordinate of their enemies, I think they definitely deserve this win here today. That's a very, very close battle indeed. Like, their allied army is gone. Everyone else has been wiped out. Maybe a few hundred troops here still remaining. And that's going to be the end of our game today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll take a look at my my casualties here. You're only going to get to see mine, unfortunately. And, yeah, decent performance. About what I would expect it here in Lysdown, probably could have done better, I think. But they ended up being isolated, although they did do damage to the target that I had brought them to my army intending to attack. So that's good. Managed to prey on some pikes a little bit. Some of my wardens did meh. The other ones more than made up for it with 201 kills. Sword Host of Region all doing well on the front lines. The Axe Guard doing well. Rangers of the Girdle getting an okay amount of kills. 100 elves is, you know, can't complain about that. Axemen did alright. Spear Host did alright. And the Marksmen did exceedingly well in addition. So, that's our game for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I hope you join me for next time, which is going to be yet more Silmarillion. I'll also be doing a stream in the near future if it hasn't already been done by the time that you see this video. So, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you later. Bye now.